Hi, Kinesiology 3010. Today we are going to talk about physical activity and physical fitness assessments for youth. I know a lot of you are interested in teaching PE at multiple different levels, so this might be an interesting one for you, as it may be applicable to your future careers. Okay, so we start with our standards for physical fitness. We know that we can do or perform norm referenced or criterion referenced measurements. So ones where we are comparing to other students, comparing to that group. So you're comparing each individual to their class or to the entire school. Or we can use criterion reference standards where we have a criteria, a set standard for what is fit at that age for that individual student based on a criteria. Think about like blood pressure measurements, BMI measurements. Those are all criteria based to say healthy, not healthy, normal, overweight, things like that. Which do you think we should use when it comes to working with youth and adolescents? Okay. If you answered criterion, then you would be correct. It's best for us to use criterion reference standards when working with youth and adolescents. Okay, that is because we have such a wide range of fitness levels and developmental stages within these groups. So at each stage, there are children who are more biologically developed, others that are less biologically developed. The closer to and the further after puberty they are, is going to influence their biological age rather than their chronological age or how old they are. Just because they are 12 years old, one student can be 12 years old and seem like they're 10, and another can be 12-year-old and seem like they're 14 biologically. So by setting these criteria, we know that they are healthy based on larger data of what is really necessary to be healthy at those age groups. Okay, we do this by using things like the fitness gram, okay, made by the Cooper Institute. This is used, you probably remember this from your elementary and middle school days, using the fitness gram as a kind of a blanket general test battery for youth physical fitness. It was developed by the Cooper Institute for Aerobics Research. It uses criterion reference standards to set students into healthy fitness zones. So are they not fit? Are they healthy fit? Are they very healthy fit? So that we know maybe we need to put in some interventions. Maybe we need to do something else to improve that student's physical fitness. And we can do this using a computerized reporting program. So there is a blanket standard for them. So the components for the youth physical fitness assessments are very similar to those that we use for the adults, older adults, but we use slightly different tests. So the components are very similar, but the tests are different. For aerobic capacity, we have a few options. We have the pacer, the 1 mile run, and the 1 mile walk test. Okay, these are 3 different aerobic capacity assessments. Last week for your lab, you went through the beep test or the pacer test, which probably brought back some flashbacks from your younger days. We have body composition tests. We can use skin fold measurements or body mass index when referring the body mass index to the youth standards. Okay, so the youth body mass index is different than the adult because youth are often shorter, smaller, so the body mass index isn't really prepared to measure those groups in the same way as they do with adults. You have to use the youth standards. Okay. For abdominal strength and trunk extensor strength, we use the curl up, which is similar to that sit-up test that you did in lab, and the trunk lift, which is looking at strength and flexibility in the trunk. We use the Sorensen test, which was more of a trunk extensor endurance test rather than range of motion specific tests. And then for upper body strength, we can use the push-up, modified push-up, pull-up, and flexed arm hang. Some schools have facilities where they can do the pull-up or a flexed arm hang. Some schools don't. So those are kind of options that we have for upper body strength and upper body endurance. I'm a big fan of using the pull-up and the flexed arm hang for youth, because especially if they're less physically active, or if they have more body mass and they're less active, they're likely more sedentary, likely are storing more adipose tissue. And a pull-up is really great at assessing if you have the strength to coordinate your entire body mass. And children who are larger, it's going to be a bigger indicator for them that, okay, or for their parents, or for your interventions, that you can help them improve their body composition. So it almost does twofold if you can include some kind of pull-up or flexed arm hang where they do a chin-up and hold the top for as long as they can. So those are other options besides just doing a push-up test, because technique does play a huge role in the push-up and trunk endurance. So the pull-up can be another option to get more information on that student or that child's physical capabilities. And lastly, flexibility, they'll use the shoulder stretch test or the sit and reach test, which we talked about the shoulder test in our adult fitness video, and the back saver sit and reach is the same sit and reach. We did a modified sit and reach for our lab, but similar assessment. Okay, so when it comes to testing our aerobic capacity or our endurance tests or aerobic endurance tests, we can use the pacer or the 1 mile run. So this is really for 9 years old and up, okay, for both of these. Under 9 years old, we're likely not doing any kind of physical fitness assessments. We're more getting these kids active, okay, getting them active, because the developmental changes that come from 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9 are so large. We'd rather use ones that are more fit to what is going to be a more consistent measure. So getting the kids active when they're young is the best way to push us forward. And then once they're old enough, okay, this would be 4th grade, 9 years old, about 4th grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, when we can start implementing some of these assessments and tracking their progress year to year and their physical fitness year to year, and month to month, and so on, depending on how you run your program. Okay, when it comes to the pacer test is spaced off in 20-meter increments, and there is a beep and a time period for each student to go from line 0 to line 20 meters. And then when that beep goes again, they have to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and the times get incrementally faster. You probably felt that during your beep assessment that you did in your last lab. So that was a chance for us to try it, and now we're going to talk about why we use it. Okay, the pacer test is a great way to assess cardiovascular endurance because it is validated, it's reliable, and the space requirements are much smaller, especially if you're in an area where you can't go outside. So think about inner city schools, schools that don't have a track, places where it snows, where most of your PE has to be done within a gym. The pacer test can be set up within a gym. We can set up 20 meters. That's not a very large space. We can use a large group of students and assess them all at the same time. So this gives us some more flexibility when it comes to testing when we don't have the facilities that optimize our other versions of fitness assessments. With the 1 mile run, this is very simple, but we want to wait until our students are capable of running a full mile. So often 4th grade is about, 3rd, 4th grade is when we start to see that physical ability where 1 mile isn't overly long of a distance for them to travel, and we can get a good measure of what they're doing physiologically. So very simple, they run 1 mile, you start at the start and you stop it at the end. So if you have the track, you have the capabilities, you have the facilities, This is another option, and you can alternate between the two, maybe in times of the year. You can compare their pacer test VO2 max compared to their 1 mile run VO2 max to see which one might be a better test for your students. So you can play around with this and you can mix it up. Some variety will always help the students out. Okay? Or we can use the 1 mile walk, which you performed in your lab a couple weeks ago. Okay? This one is more of a high school test. So this one also gets the students involved in their measurements and can be better for students that are maybe more sedentary, have less general physical fitness. This is a more physically capable test. Okay, so you time their ability to complete the mile, take their heart rate for 15 seconds, then you get them involved by they take their heart rate for 15 seconds. They learn about heart rate. You can implement it with other lessons about physical fitness, about health, and they're at an age where they can really comprehend that. And then we can score them based. We can include their body weight, height, gender, weight, or walk time and heart rate into our regression equation that you have from your lab to assess their physical fitness. And you can use this, all three of those tests, with adolescents or with post-pubescent students. So 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So basically your high school aged student. When it comes to body composition, we can use skin fold measurements, the 3-site or the 4-site, or we could use a single site. But these are much more invasive, and your students may not want to perform these kinds of assessments because it is uncomfortable. You do have to have someone touching you. So it might not be the best measurement for body composition. When it comes to a feasibility, you need an experienced tester. So BMI might be the more, or just using body weight and tracking body weight with height over time might be the better option when it comes to body composition. Okay, with the curl up, we have a maximum of 75. So there's a criteria for just extremely fit, and we cut the test off. We set the knees at a 140 degree angle, so you can see that here with her knees. And we set up a mat, and the fingers must test or touch the edge of the mat. It's about half the distance between the student's hips and their heels in that position, or closer to their heels depending on how you're going to run the test. But you can do this on a metronome, up, down, and the fitness gram does have criteria for each of those levels. Okay, with the trunk lift, we face down, hands under our thighs, and then we lift. So we're performing trunk extension. So going through the spinal extension, taking the entire spine through an extension pattern. And the scoring is the height of the chin compared to the floor. Okay, so students who have more flexibility at the trunk will be able to lift higher. Those who are stronger and more flexible will be able to lift higher. The maximum is 12 inches, and then we score them based on how high they can get their chin off the ground. Most of these tests are great because you can have students pair together to perform the tests. So then the student gets a chance to be the participant as well as kind of the researcher. You can create kind of a game about it and still get all of this physical fitness assessment data so that you can change your program, better your program, make sure that your program is doing what it's supposed to do to improve the physical fitness of your students. Okay. When it comes to creating reliable and valid fitness tests for your students, make sure that they have adequate knowledge of the test description. So I recommend doing practice runs. Give demonstrations, practice, because we don't want to learn that they are, say our test scores them as low fit when in reality they just didn't understand the test. So make sure that we have proper instructions. Give your instructions on their level of verbiage. So talk to them as if you were talking to them as a peer, so that they can understand a peer as in you are their peer. not they are your peer. So use wording that they understand. Check for understanding, ask them questions, reinforce questions, and then give them chances to practice the test. Maybe over a week span, you practice the test and then you have the test the next week. Gives them time to practice, gives them time to learn the test, and then they can get a better, more valid measure of their fitness. And when it comes to measuring physical activity in youth, this is a big thing that we need to think about now, with especially this remote learning environment that we're in right now. If physically inactive children become physically inactive adults, and they have a higher risk for chronic diseases. So it is our job now to help promote physical activity in children so that it can promote physical activity in adulthood, which can promote longer life, healthier life, better quality of life. Okay, so we're trying to set these children up for a quality of life that is extended much longer than maybe the average adult. So we're trying to set them up to be physically active for the rest of their life so they can be healthy. Okay. When it comes to maybe using a fitness questionnaire or a physical activity questionnaire, the FitnessGram has a version. We can ask simple questions like, how many days of the past 7 days did you participate in physical activity for a total of 30 to 60 minutes or more over the course of a day? This includes moderate activities, vigorous activities. Circle the number of days. Okay, this is an example question. This is very large in wording, so we might want to use this as kind of a higher level rather than looking at this as something that we could use with younger children. We can do the same thing with strength activity questionnaires. So how many exercises did you do to strengthen your muscles? Example exercises, circle the number of days. So giving them examples gives them a chance to say, oh, I know that, I did that. So then they can circle those days, rather than just saying, I don't know what I did to strengthen my muscles. But if you give them examples, they're more likely to answer more effectively or more correct based on what they've done. And then flexibility, how many times did you do stretching? So examples, touching your toes, leg stretches, arm stretches, and answer that way. Okay, we can also use kind of like activity logs. So what activity did you do? Was it light, moderate, or vigorous? And they can just check the boxes. The problem with this is that they have to do it throughout the day. Or you can have them sit back and do a recall. Maybe it's later in the day, maybe it's at the end of the week, and you do recalls over each day. It's better to do it right away. So maybe you do this on one day. Maybe you're working with your students, they're remote learning, or it's the days that you don't see your students. So maybe you're in a physical activity profession. You only see your students on Tuesdays and Thursdays for some groups and Mondays and Wednesdays for other groups. Maybe on those other days, so on your Monday, Wednesday group, on Tuesday and Thursday, you have them do an activity log. So they keep their activity log with them. It maybe doesn't have to be as detailed as this, but it has times, and they write in if they did an activity, what it was, or if they rested, or if they were doing moderate activity, light activity, vigorous activity. Make sure they understand what each one means and each one feels like so they can give the best results. All right, I also have some examples of these healthy fitness zones. So with these healthy fitness zones, we can look at the percentage that are and the percentage that aren't falling within the criteria. If you're interested in these, you can go back to the Cooper Institute and look at really where those standards are. So we have our aerobic capacity, body composition, abdominal strength, trunk endurance, muscular strength for the upper body, and flexibility. If we look at these two grades, grade 5 and grade 7, say we compare these same group of students in grade 5 and grade 7. So we're looking to see if over the past 2 years that they have been a student in my physical education program, have they improved these capacities? So Are there more or less within that healthy fitness zone for each of these qualities? So for aerobic capacity, say I have 53 at 5th grade and then I have 47, that might be an indicator to me that my students are not getting the aerobic capacity exercise that they need to improve their aerobic capacity. And some may be getting less aerobically fit. When it comes to body composition, 67 and then 60, I see that less are within the healthy fitness zone in body composition, which means that they maybe are adding more adipose tissue. That might be a red flag to me that, hey, I'm not doing enough aerobic capacity work. They're not getting the same kind of activity they need to maintain a healthy body weight. And then I look at abdominal strength. They got stronger. Trunk extensor strength, they got stronger. Upper body strength, they stayed about the same. And flexibility, they got more flexible. So these students got stronger and more flexible, but they lost quality body composition, or their body composition diminished or got worse on our standards, and their aerobic capacity got worse on our standards. So that can tell me, okay, now that we're in 7th grade or now moving into 8th grade, I know that we need to maintain this strength we've developed, maybe improve it a little bit, but I need to focus more on aerobic capacity and body composition, because we're losing or lowering the total number of students or percentage of students within that healthy fitness zone. So I don't have as many healthy students. So I want to work to have as few as I can in this not healthy fitness zone. So that's just an example of how you can do your own analysis. As long as you're using those similar tests and you're testing over time, you can look at those changes within your students and make interventions or decisions that you're going to put into your program to make those improvements. All right. Now I have some answers to some following questions or group questions that I recommend that you go through and answer these. Maybe you can do them within your group that you have for your projects. That can be a great time to kind of discuss some of the content, or you could do them on your own if that's what you choose. But wink, wink, these might be something that are coming in on your final exam, so be aware. All right, the more you do them early, the better chance you have of being successful. Okay, in the context of fitness testing, why should children be compared to a criteria rather than a norm? Okay, so think back to the start of this lecture, and then think of some other reasons, maybe on your own. Are there limitations when it comes to self-reported physical activity in youth? If so, what are they and how can we avoid them? Okay, so think back to how we word those questions, understanding of questions, how well they remember. Okay? Why are physical fitness assessments necessary in youth? Think about what happens if we have physically inactive, unfit youth. What does that really lead to long term? Are they really going to change that much? Think about it. Okay, and then we have some other questions, some additional more applied questions, especially if you're going into physical activity. You'll probably face these challenges, or physical education, you'll probably face these challenges sometime in the future. Okay. You and your group are physical education instructors at a local elementary school. Unfortunately, you are only with your students 2 days per week for 1 hour. This is very common. Okay. Which physical fitness assessments would you use to assess your students, and why would you choose those assessments? Okay, think about your time availability. Okay, you don't see these students very often. You only see them 2 hours a week. What are you going to do to assess their physical fitness with that small time frame? And how are you going to decide which test to administer while still promoting a positive attitude towards physical activity? Because if you just pound test over and over, testing doesn't make improvements. Training and practice makes improvements. Testing is just measuring if that actually changed. So we can't just hammer tests down the students' throats and make them think that physical activity is fun, especially if they're not performing well. So how do you still administer some tests, show that you're improving your students while still promoting a physical activity, a positive physical activity attitude? Where they want to be physically active when they're not in your PE class, when they want to be physically active all the time. All right, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please send me an email or set up an office hours appointment. I'm happy to discuss this with you. Make sure that you are preparing your projects. Okay, your first draft of your qualitative analysis project is up, and your video for your quantitative analysis, how you're going to break down that project. I'll have a video up soon. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you in our next video.